This episode of Product for Product is brought to you by The Resurrector, a book by Moshe now pre-selling at igg.me/at/the-resurrector.
Hello, everyone. It's Matt Moshe. Welcome back to Product for Product. Thanks for tuning in this week. Today, we're discussing in-app messaging with the tool Appcues. We are excited to have Eliane Pohl on the show to discuss her experiences with Appcues and in product management. Welcome to the show, Eliane. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a sec to introduce yourself before we start.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So my name is Eliane. I'm originally from Europe, grew up in Seattle and live in Sweden now. And I've worked with product management and software related stuff for about 15 years now. So it's kind of my wheelhouse and what I love doing. Right now, I work for a company called Greenbyte, and we do monitoring tools for renewable energy. So it's a pretty exciting sector to be in. But product is what I'm all about.
Hi, Eliane. Hi, Matt, and everyone. This does sound like a very exciting space to be in with the renewable energy.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of fun and exciting, and lots of good things happening. So that's nice.
Yeah,
that's very cool. Very cool. And this is a B2B product. So you sell those monitoring systems to other companies that create this type of monitoring of renewable energy devices or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. It's B2B. We sell our platform to companies that produce renewable energy on a pretty large scale. So don't think about, private rooftop solar or anything like that. These are like big wind farms, offshore wind farms, and huge solar plants. So yeah, that's our target customer.
Yeah, a big scale. Perfect. So let's dive into Appcues. You mentioned 15 years of experience in product management. So I'm sure you have seen things being developed throughout the years, tools that we didn't have and we have these days, etc. Can you first tell us a bit about the product itself, Appcues, and a bit about how you're using it?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think this whole sort of range of tools that you can use for doing in-app guides and things is really, really cool. Like you said, I've been around for a while, and these kinds of systems are still, relatively new, although I think now they're being used more and more. They're really, really useful. So Appcues is a tool that you can use if you have a SaaS-based system that you can use to create in-app guides, that you can use to make pop-ups and things to help your users either navigate the system, learn the system. You can make announcements to users, all kinds of things to sort of interact with your user while they're using your system, which is really, really useful. They're just great for onboarding and for increasing engagement of new features and stuff like that. Really cool tools. And for me, one of the best things about them is that you don't need engineers. You don't need to use your software engineers that are busy creating new features and adding new, solving problems for your customers. You don't need to involve them in any of this. Any old idiot can do this. Even I can do it. So, so they're really good in that way.
Yeah, that's really perfect, and that's also one of those things that I like about these type of products, that we don't really need to reinvent it on things that other people already developed, and we can just quickly integrate and start using them. So give us a few examples of how you guys are using them.
Yeah, sure. So the number one thing we use Appcues for is actually for our release notes. So we do weekly releases, and usually Monday when the release goes out, when a user logs in for the first time after the release, they'll get a nice pop-up that shows them what's new in the system that week. And that's just a really nice way to make users aware of new features, which is pretty cool. I'd say that's our number one usage. Beyond that, we use it to highlight a new feature. So let's say something came out a while and we can see maybe it's not getting the usage that we expected, or we're thinking it needs to be pushed a little more, marketed a little more. You can put like a little hotspot on the screen, and the user can they see this thing kind of flashing at them, and they click on it, and they'll get an announcement letting them know about the new feature, or reminding them that there's a new feature. Those are probably number one and number two. We also really like to use it for surveys. So we do product market fit surveys quarterly of our users, where we can ask them, things about how they like our product, how well it is, or how sad they would be if they couldn't use it anymore. So the right question to ask, I guess. So that's one thing we use it for, those sort of quarterly metrics. We also use it for satisfaction about new features. So we built this feature to solve this problem for you. Did we do that? Did we succeed? And for that, we just use, the happiness index with the 5 little smileys, and they can either say, nope, I'm not happy with this, or I am happy. And that's just a really nice metric for us to see, are we building the right things, or did we build this in the right way? Did we actually solve the problem that we were trying to solve? So I'd say those are the top 3 usages for us.
So you mentioned a few things that you do need to collect data from them, like the surveys. Are those surveys inside Appcues, or do you have to embed like another survey system within the in-app message?
You can do Appcues surveys. They have like it's not super advanced survey features, but it's typically enough. They also enable you to embed if you want to use Typeform or something else to do your survey, you can do that pretty easily as well.
Right. Okay. And then what about data collection? I know this is usually something Matt is very interested to hear about.
You said data.
data collection and data analytics, to understand how actually they use this information. Or, for example, you mentioned the announcement of new releases. I'm doing it as well where I work, but I do see that most people don't really open them up.
Right.
So what do you see on your end? Or first of all, how do you collect the data in Appcues? And then what do you see on your end? That will be interesting to hear.
Yeah, so Appcues gives you pretty good analytics. When you have a modal or something that pops up, you can see how many people it was shown to, how many people just sort of swatted it away, and how many people clicked it, read it and then got rid of it. And you can see, and if you do guides where they go through multiple steps, then of course you can see how far they get, which step they fall off on and those kinds of things. And I would say that's a really good question. I think we probably have similar results to you, that the majority of people just immediately close things. Without really looking at them. We do for our release notes and for a few key things when we're making sort of bigger announcements. Appcues has this really nice feature called the Launchpad, which enables you to have sort of an icon wherever you want on your screen that your users can click, like a notification icon, to get things back. So a lot of people will click the release notes away, because they're in the middle of their workflow and they don't have time, but they will go back to the Launchpad and click and read them later. So that's quite useful. And that's a relatively new feature in Appcues, and I'm really happy that they developed that. That's being able to get back something that you've closed is really helpful.
Yeah, in other products similar to Appcues or their competitors, I've seen it called resource centers. It's probably similar to that.
Yes. That's right.
Cool. And then can you tell us a bit about some of the reasons that you chose Appcues? Like, did you look at other systems?
Yeah. So when I started at the company I'm at now, they were using WalkMe, and I'm not going to diss WalkMe. I don't really know that much about it. I'm not sure we implemented it very well, because what we saw when we had WalkMe implemented was a huge performance hit. And we couldn't have that. And so we shopped around, and this was probably 2.5 years ago, for another system. And at that time, we just landed on Appcues when we did sort of feature comparisons, pricing, looking at all those things. Appcues was just where we landed.
Yeah. I'm thinking also to look at WalkMe, if we can find someone that will talk with us about it as part of the series. I think the main difference over there is that WalkMe at least from what I've read so far, is that it's good for like enterprise users to be able to learn about different ways to use their enterprise applications.
Yeah,
So it's almost like
their internal systems.
internal
right?
system, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can apply it to any system or something like that, where a system like Appcues is more to product management. For us as product managers, that we want to add this functionality to our system, and we want our users to be able to learn how to use the system. But that will be interesting to hear, because that's all I know really about WalkMe.
No, I don't know too much either.
Did you look at other systems as well?
We did. I think we looked at least briefly at user pilots.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps, but I don't remember many details about any of the ones that we had looked. Oh, we definitely looked at Intercom, because everybody was talking about Intercom at that time. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And then we had WalkMe.
But
I think those were probably the main ones we looked at.
But you landed at Appcues at the end.
Yes, we landed on Appcues.
Do you remember why, or it was just the best of the? For your case?
I think for our case, it met our needs. I remember when we were doing sort of the trial, we did a lot of performance testing. Again, we'd had bad experience, so that was sort of our main thing.
Right.
Our implementation team was sort of like, if it doesn't perform, you can't use it. So we were really keen on finding something that, that our users wouldn't notice, basically, from a performance perspective. Yeah.
Right.
And then I think the pricing was pretty good at the time. And it's been a while since I've looked and compared with anything else to know if it's still competitive.
For sure. No, but if you're happy with it, that's all that it matters, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the integration? Because the reason I'm asking is I was actually working in the startup, and we had I wasn't really part of the selection of Appcues, but that came actually from our customer success team rather than from the product management team at the time. They selected Appcues, but then I'm talking here, 3-4 years already. So I'm sure it's been developed much more than then. But what I do remember was that there was a lot of back and forth between the person that tried to implement it and the developers. And you mentioned that it's actually, you don't need developers to help you with setting up things.
Okay. I guess I should backtrack and explain that a little more. For the initial integration, you probably need a developer. And I know we used an engineer for that. That said, I think it was super easy for that engineer. As I recall, it was sort of every engineering manager's nightmare. I just walked by a team and was like, hey, can anybody just see how hard it would be to implement this? And we have that one engineer, that's always like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And he did it super fast. I think it was like a same day thing. He's like, this took like half an hour. It was super easy. But once it's integrated, that's what I mean. Once it's integrated to create the modals and things, you don't need any kind of engineers.
Yeah, they reference no code on their site.
Exactly.
That's perfect. So it's probably a change, because back then, actually for every hotspot on a screen, or for every model that we wanted to create, or with Appcues, we needed an engineer to change it. So I think that probably it's much better these days.
That's it's all done just through a browser plugin. It's super easy. It's really nice.
I just don't remember it as a pleasant experience. Okay, perfect. That's really good to hear. And in your organization, you're heading the product team. Do you also use it in other departments, like customer success and other places? Because usually that's really good.
Yeah, that's usually who uses it. So our customer success team has always been sort of interested and wants to pick it up. They have been, I would say, I don't know if I want to say under-resourced or overworked, but they've been so busy, they haven't had the bandwidth. They just recently hired a training specialist. So I expect that person is going to be in Appcues a lot, because his whole role is like, streamlining, onboarding, and making that process better. So I think he's going to love it. That's my expectation. And we'll probably become our key user in Appcues.
Right. So following on that, when you have more and more people using it for different type of use cases, or even within product management, if you have several users using it, sometimes I find that there could becomes a bit of chaos on setting up the different guides and then throttling them so people are not getting annoyed with too many guides and naming conventions and things like that. How do you manage it at your place? And also, how does Appcues help you manage that in the application?
Yeah, so I don't think that they do really help you manage that, which is unfortunate. That I think would be something that could be quite useful for them to do, to just give you sort of when you choose your target audience for a specific modal, if there was something like, hey, this audience that you picked right now, they're getting 3 others or whatever, if there was some kind of warning or an indication saying you're kind of spamming people right now, so take it easy. That would be a nice feature, and there's nothing like that. So for now, the best way to avoid that really is just through good internal communication, and that anyone who's in there creating things, that they talk to each other and say, hey, I'm going to create this marketing thing, it's going for these people, or it's going to show on this page, and then we kind of say, okay, yeah, we're aware of that. And when you go into your Appcues dashboard, you can see everything that's live, but it isn't super apparent necessarily who it's going to. You can use some, there's tags, so you can tag things by audience if you wanted to. That would probably be an easy way to keep an overview, to say, okay, these are going to specific, region, type of user, persona, whatever. That would be one way to do it.
And what about the look and feel? Do they have templates so you can all use the same look and feel for the guides, and you don't create a whole mess of different things that don't look anything like your product?
Yes, they do. They have a whole bunch of templates, and you can either use their standard, or you can start with a standard and just go in and adapt the CSS so that it looks like your product. You can customize it as much as you want in the CSS if you know what you're doing, or you can just use whatever they have out of the box. I
see. How easy is the interface to create those guides?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Again, you tell it which sort of URL you want to start building on. You go there, and then it's all in a browser plugin. So you open that up, and then there's really easy navigation. You're looking at your website that you're used to looking at, and you just kind of can click through. And there's sort of two ways to do it. There's like the navigation mode as you're clicking through, telling it where. If you're doing a guide, letting somebody know, in order to create a report, you need to click here and then fill this in. You can, as you do those clicks, you're in sort of one mode. And then as you create the modal, you're just in this sort of modal creation mode. It's very easy to use. It's, I think, quite intuitive. I've helped our marketing team uses Appcues a little bit, and did a really brief intro for them, like a 45-minute, here, let me show you around Appcues. And then they just hit the ground running and were able to create modals. It's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, I was thinking you brought up marketing in a previous conversation Moshe and I had. The use case for this kind of tool, there was questions around product management owning this, marketing owning this. Moshe alluded to this in a previous question, but so is your marketing team wanting to use this as well as a tool?
Yeah. Yes, they want to use it as well. They like to. We have a marketplace where we sell sort of partner software, and they like to, when we get a new partner and things like that, we like to promote that through Appcues. And then there are some other sort of marketing promotions. If we had back in the days when we had user conferences, we could announce those kinds of things through Appcues. So they sort of dabble in Appcues, and I like to say maybe this is just me being persnickety about the product, but as sort of product person, product manager, if something is showing up for our users, I think product should own it.
Yeah.
Appcues is owned by product in our company, and others use it, but we have control over what's going on, and we're aware of what they're doing. Nobody's sort of cowboying around in Appcues, because again, it affects our user experience, which impacts our OKRs at the end of the day.
And I tend to agree with you, Eliane, about that specific point. I've seen it being owned by others, mainly because sometimes it came from other departments and then expanded into product. And I think that when you look also at some of the vendors, like Appcues and other vendors, throughout the years, they, at least one of them that I know, but maybe others as well, they kind of changed their message, who they're selling it to. They started with product management, and then they moved to others because they saw the potential in selling it to the others, but then it did create this type of situations like you're describing, because it doesn't really, the user don't really know where it's coming from. They don't know it's Appcues or it's another product. All they know is they're using your product. So you want to have a holistic view of that and see how it affects everything.
Right. Yeah, for sure. You don't want just random things popping up for your users. That's never good.
Yeah. But talking about marketing, also one of the things we thought about last time we talked was about A/B testing. And A/B testing for marketing is almost like they're breath and soul. They love to do it all the time. But even for product management, we love to do A/B testing of different designs or different ways the system work. Is there any support in Appcues to do things like that?
You could do, you can do A/B testing using Appcues, but that's more for like doing different versions of flows, of Appcue flows, right? You're not doing A/B testing of your actual product. It's more doing different versions of a guide or whatever, and doing A/B testing that way. Yes, they have full support for that.
Oh, cool. That's good to hear as well. We talked a lot about, the different scenarios and implementing it, and a bit of the data and user interface. Maybe what are the top 3 best features that you see over there?
So I mentioned the Launchpad already, which is really cool. I think that's a nice feature. They have a relatively new feature that they're calling events. That are really, really cool. And what you can do is set up, and again, without using any engineers, you can set up an event by saying, okay, if a user clicks here and then here and then here, or clicks here and then, enters something in this form, that's an event. And then I want to track who does that and how many times that's done, or when they do that, then I want to target them with a specific message, kind of a thing. That's really cool, because without having to use any kind of code, I can then sort of track specific workflows that I'm interested in my system. And that's, as a product manager, that's quite useful, I think. If I want to know, how are people, if we have multiple ways of doing something, which one are they really doing the most, right? How are they getting to our task form if they want to create a task in our system? There's lots of ways they can get there. Which way are they actually using? And I could create events for the different options, and then I can really easily see exactly how people are opening a specific form, for example.
So it's actually, you could also trigger a specific in-app message based on these events?
Yes.
Oh, that is very cool. Because usually, what I've seen before is that on specific event, like, well, I shouldn't really use the word event because then it will confuse everyone, because this is specifically how Appcues define an event. But clicking on an element on the screen. So if you click on an element on the screen and you are of a specific segment, then the message will pop up, or something will happen with the in-app messaging. But what you're saying is not just clicking on a specific event, but you click on the event, but you came from a certain place and you can define that workflow. That is powerful.
Yeah, it is really powerful. So you can make a whole series of clicks, right? And say, when they do these things in this order, that's when I want to show them the flow. It's quite powerful.
And we touched a bit on that, on segmentation, and we didn't talk about this before. How do you define segmentation, like the persona or the different type of people that are going to see specific messages?
Yeah, so we actually have integrated Appcues with Salesforce because we have a lot of user data in Salesforce. That's where we get sort of their title. We get data from both Salesforce and from our actual platform. So we have, their name, their title or their role in that way, where they're located, which kind of, in our case, which kind of renewable energy they work with, and on and on. So there's lots of different data points we can use, and we can use any of those for segmentation. So a role would be one. So I want to target asset managers who work with solar assets, for example. would be a way to do it. Or I could say, I want to target anybody who's in Toronto. I mean, that would be another way to do it, right? Depending on what kind of message I'm trying to send. But we can segment in a million different ways. And I could target by customer, since we're B2B. If there's something maybe our success team specifically wants to let a specific customer know about, we can actually target users from just that one customer. Or you can even go down to a specific user and say, I want this one user to see this thing, which can be, it is. It's pretty powerful. Lots you can do.
Yeah. And you mentioned integrations with Salesforce. What other type of integrations they support?
That's a really good question. It's been a while since I've looked. I'm assuming they're going to say they support integration to anything. We haven't needed. I'm trying to think if because we use user voice, for collecting feedback from customers, but we haven't integrated our user voice with Appcues. We kind of integrate everything with Salesforce. So Salesforce is more like
it's pretty standard.
The main base.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. I've done that before also. And we had an interesting use case that we used it to tell people before the subscription ending that the subscription is going to end. So warn them in advance. And that information was only in Salesforce. And then they would go to their account manager and internal account manager to renew it, because the users were not the one paying the bills. It was someone else in the company.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But we didn't want them to all of a sudden get to a situation that their accounting did not pay the bills or did not renew it. And also they need to maybe think about it. Do they want to renew it? They don't want to renew it and all that stuff. So it was a good way to give them a warning up front through the system.
Yeah, that's pretty smart, actually. That's nice. Yeah.
That was a use case that came from our sales department. And when they mentioned it, I was like, yes, let's do it. I loved it. So it's always good because it helps us also with the OKRs to reduce churn. So it's always good. And then also integration wise, sometimes you have in your application, in your product, situations where people do things, but they don't really click on any element on the screen. And you still want to track them or to give them some messaging if they do something like that. Do you have a way to programmatically do it with Appcues?
So you can, if they just go to a specific screen, you can have something pop up for them. And now I can see with that whole events thing, one of the things you can do is you can trigger things on just a hover. So they haven't even actually clicked on anything, but they're hovering over an element that can trigger a flow as well.
What about I don't know if you're in your product, you have drag and drop, but sometimes drag and drop are harder for browsers to trigger the same event as other events on elements. Is that something you ever had to deal with?
We have very little drag and drop in our system. There's a little, and I don't think we've ever tried to sort of target anything based on drag and drop. So I can't answer that one.
Sure. Yeah. That's the one scenario that I was thinking about that I had an issue with in the past.
And drag and drop's tricky.
Exactly. And I had to use the product APIs to do that. So that's where I'm referring to programmatically from my product. We use their APIs to raise a specific, event when someone did that. Now, we ask you about, features you liked. Are there any features you don't like? If someone from Appcues will listen to that, this will be great feedback for them.
Opportunity.
I think maybe their weakest feature that I'm aware of is their NPS feature. And again, it's been a while since we tried it, but it didn't provide enough data and it didn't allow us to do nuanced enough sort of targeting. They have an NPS feature that lets you, do an NPS survey of your users. But it didn't give us enough good data back, and it just wasn't nuanced enough. So we ended up using something else, and then we stopped using NPS altogether. But at the time, I would say that was the area that just seemed like somebody had requested it from them, and they did it, but it didn't seem like they really wanted to do it. If you know what I
mean. It's probably that, or it was just a checklist from a competition to say, maybe. Oh yes, we also have that.
Yeah, they got themselves right into the build trap, maybe.
Yeah, that's right, the build trap.
Exactly. And if they had the NPS, if they hear it and they improve it, would you consider using it? Because some people I've seen polarized opinions about NPSs. I like them, but I've seen other people that really don't like them. So would you try it again?
I'm not sure if we would go back to NPS. We started using product market fit instead. I think they're similar probably. But for me, as product person, I always felt and again, B2B, I feel like it was super hard to know what was moving that NPS needle. Yeah, and we always joked that we could do, add whatever features we wanted. We would never know if that was impacting NPS, or we could send one of our customer success managers out to have a beer with users and see their NPS score go up. You know what I mean? Like it just seems so kind of arbitrary. I think it's really hard to know. Maybe it's easier in a B2C world where you have such direct data from individual users and they're doing things because they want to, not because it's part of a job.
Right.
But NPS, I felt like, we could create a feature. Did that impact NPS? Who knows? I mean, there's just no way of connecting those two things. Yeah. So I didn't think for us it was super useful.
So this is where I'm kind of debating in my head if I should say the next thing on earth, but everyone that knows me already through the podcast, and for sure, Matt, that there is another product that I'm using. I don't want to name it today just because we're talking about Appcues, but maybe we should talk about it after the podcast. So if anyone is interested, or maybe it will come up in that other episode, because there are actually interesting things to do with NPS when it's implemented right. So. Okay, cool. Just a few questions about the company. How is it to work with Appcues, the company? Do they support you? Do you feel they're obsessed about you?
I think that we get really nice support from Appcues when we ask for it. I don't think they're super in your face, which I actually appreciate. I feel like we have some other vendors right now that are just so aggressive and everybody I should be careful what I say because we want to have regular meetings between customer success and our users. So, but it's kind of get a lot when I have a bunch of vendors and they all want to have like a monthly meeting with me to talk about their system. And I'm like, you know what? It's working fine. I have no problems. And they're like, yeah, but we can talk about how you can get more out of it. And I'm like, no, leave me alone.
But you are empathetic. You are empathetic to them because you're trying to do the same with others.
I am empathetic, and I know when I try every once in a while when they're like, hey, we're looking for input into a new feature. I'm like, that's a poor product manager that wants to talk to a user. Yes, I will give them half an hour. But a lot of the customer success teams that want to hear how we're doing, and I just don't always have the time. But I think Appcues, I don't feel like they are super aggressive when it comes to that, which for me, I appreciate. I think they're there when we need them. I think they're very responsive. We've never had big problems. They always solve everything. Their own performance and uptime is excellent. So we just haven't needed much from them. But when we have needed help, they were there for us. That's what I can say. And they are not like in our face. So I don't think that they're obsessed with us, but I think that they provide really the right level of service for us.
Okay, so maybe just let us know where everyone can find you these days if they want to ask questions or connect with you.
Yeah, sure. I think the easiest way is probably on LinkedIn. You can find me at Eliane Pohl. I guess somewhere in these show notes or somewhere, my name will be spelled so people can spell it. That's probably the easiest way to find me.
Wonderful. Eliane, so thank you so much for joining the show. We really do appreciate it. This topic is extremely interesting for me and Moshe. I think there's a lot of use cases here, and there's a lot we still have to learn from it, but this has been immensely helpful for sure.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, it's a super fun topic of many topics in product that are fun to talk about. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we could spend hours and hours talking about it because there's so many things that one can do with in-app messaging. We didn't touch on experimentation and on some other things, but it was really lovely having you, Eliane, and meeting you. And who knows, maybe we'll have you again in the future for another product you're using.
I would love to. It's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you again. And thank you all the listeners for joining us on Product for Product, and we'll check you next time.
This episode of Product for Product was brought to you by The Resurrector, a book by Moshe, now pre-selling at IGG, appcues.me/at/the-resurrector until August 23rd, 2021.